To check that the blade is running correctly on the machine, open the top door of your bandsaw.
And check the saw blade is running on the center of the top wheel. And that will be an adjustment on the back of the machine to tilt the wheel forward or back. Always check that your bandsaw blade is vertical with the table. Use a small tri-square, or if you've got one, the fence from your bandsaw, and you can bring that against the blade and check that it's square.
The table will have an adjustment underneath it to be able to tilt the table to the correct angle.
Next thing to do is check that the guide wheels are correctly aligned. The top wheel needs to support the back of the blade, so if the blade is moving, the back wheel needs to be brought forward until it just catches the back of the blade. Not too much, that was too much. There we go. So with no pushing on the blade, it doesn't move. Slight push and the wheel moves. And lock that off tight. Bottom wheels or static blocks, varies on the bandsaw, need to be brought forward enough to support as much of the blade as possible, but not come into the teeth. So just behind the hollow of the teeth, and lock that off and check that that's running. Slight push, there goes the back wheel, and these side wheels want to be almost touching the sides, so tiny bit of movement there. And one would check the same thing with the wheels underneath. Adjust the height of the guides so that there's not a big gap above the wood. So bring the guides down and lock it off until there's only about just over a centimetre gap above the wood. That will support the blade, and also it'll make it safer for your hands. Make sure you've got some glasses on. Reading glasses or protective goggles. Make sure you've got a vacuum cleaner attached to the back of the bandsaw, in my case, sometimes underneath the table. If you don't have a vacuum cleaner attached to it, you must wear a dust mask. I've marked an area not to go into with your fingers, so when you're cutting, your fingers can reach the dotted line and then tuck away and use a push stick to push the wood in, and your fingers can guide the wood out the back. So I'll start the machine and we'll try that.
Make sure you wait for the saw blade and the motor to stop completely before you remove any wood.
When you cut through wood, go at a medium pace. As you reach the end of your cut, slow down so the wood doesn't jerk forward and your hand potentially go nearer the blade. Also, my push towards the saw is more of a down and a gentle push. It's not a hard push towards the blade. For a thicker piece of wood, you'll need to up your guides until it's about 1 centimetre above. Lock that off. And now when you cut, do not go too fast, otherwise the saw blade will jam with sawdust behind. I did that too fast, so now there's a lot of sawdust behind the blade. Managed to just get it out. So what I do is I would have a line, and I do a zigzag line across it to mark for me to go in that far and clear the blade and then carry on. Here we go. This applies if you are not going to cut all the way through. If you're going to cut all the way through, you can go as fast as you like. If you want to cut a slice of some wood, use a fence made for your saw. Adjust the guides out of the way if it's smaller than the guide size. Lock that, start that off, and then cut through it, pushing it against the fence. Always start with the wood off the saw blade before you start the saw. These narrow blades are able to cut amazingly tight curves, but if the curve is too tight, don't force the blade. Test out on a bit of wood to see what you can do without damaging the blade. So for this thickness of wood, I was able to cut that curve, but this curve was too tight, so I've just gone out and cut it slightly wider.